So now that we created an Android project, let's compile and run it on an emulator. But to do that, first we need to get familiar with a very important tool in Android development, which is called Gradle. It's an automation tool. It helps you automate the repetitive tasks in building software, like managing dependencies, compiling, running tests, packaging the application, and deploying it. Let's check them one by one. Managing dependencies. A typical Android app depends on a lot of libraries and frameworks. They help to build your app faster and easier. For example, think of loading an image. You get a URL address from the image and you want to show the image to the user. So you need to either build the mechanism to download the image and display it, or you can use a library for it, an image loader library, which we will use in this course. So these are dependencies, and Gradle makes it easy to manage them. Next, we have compiling code. Your Java or Android code needs to be converted to bytecode so it can be run on the Android devices. Because Android devices, they talk bytecode, they don't talk Kotlin. So this step is also managed by Gradle. And this compiled code is packaged together with the assets that you have, like images, fonts, things like that. So they packaged together into one file. And that one file can be installed on an Android device. Gradle also can deploy that file, an installable file, on a server, for example, if you want to share it with the team. And it can run automated tests. Test automation is another story for itself, so we don't cover it in this course, but it's quite handy, and Gradle makes sure that tests are passing. And you can also have custom build logic, something that you want to automate. You can write a script in Gradle and make sure it runs every time you compile and run the app. So let's see how these Gradle scripts look like. So we created the project, and hopefully, if you have no error, after waiting a long time for Gradle to import the project, it will look something like this. And on the left side, this is where you can see the Gradle scripts. If you have it in project mode, then this is where you can see the scripts, and here. There are multiple Gradle files. One of them is project level. So this one, this includes configuration that are for the entire project. There's not much going on here, but you could add configurations here. But we also have another Gradle file, which is module level. So Android apps, when they grow big, they are split into modules. This is again outside of the scope of this course, but in the future, when your app gets too complex, at some point you will feel the need to break it into different modules. So each module has its own Gradle script file. And this script file is for the app module. When we created the project, we chose a couple of configurations. You can see them here. So this is where they are stored. Like, for example, the package name here is referred to as application ID. Minimum SDK version, so the minimum Android OS which is supported by our app, that's 24. Target SDK is the Android OS version that this app is designed for and tested for. And then we have version code and version name. They can be a bit confusing, but maybe let's start with version name because it's more familiar. This is what users see on App Store. It's a string value. It looks like a number, but it's actually just a string. You can write anything here. This is informative. It doesn't really have a technical meaning for the Android OS or the App Store. It's just for informing the user. What has the technical meaning is the version code, which is an integer number. So you cannot have like fractions and stuff like that. It's an integer code. This is used by Android OS and the App Store to check whether this app needs to be updated. Oh yeah, and version code is invisible to users. Only version name is what users can see. And lower down here, you see the dependencies of this module. a lot of libraries, as you see. We haven't even added our own libraries. These are the Android libraries. But we'll come back to dependencies and how to modify them a bit later. Before running the app, we need to sync the project with Gradle. So what is this syncing? There is this icon here on the top, sync project with Gradle files. There are certain situations that you need to sync your project with Gradle before compiling and running the app. So for example, when you create the project, when you import a project, or when you touch any of these Gradle files, change something here, these are the moments that you will see it here as well. It says Gradle file has been changed. Now I need to sync the project. After syncing, if you don't get any error, hopefully, then you can run the app. Let's try it. Now I'm going to run the app. And I got an error. Quite likely that you will get some sort of error for the first time when you create or import a project. It's complaining about the target SDK version. So it's funny because this project was created by a template of Android Studio. But even a newly created project can have bugs and like errors, as you see. Basically, it's trying to tell me you use 35 target SDK. And it can be just fixed like this, very easy. And now I can run the app, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Voila! This is my amazing app. You might also run into another common error. I'm going to simulate the situation just to show you how the error looks like. This kind of error. Somewhere in this error you can see the name of Android Gradle plugin, or AGP for short. It's a bridge between general purpose Gradle and Android development. So this plugin makes it possible to use Gradle for Android development. And it can be quite annoying sometimes because AGP has its own version and Gradle has also its own version. So sometimes they become incompatible. And when you see this kind of error, you need to upgrade the version of AGP. But where do we do that? So the dependencies that we talked about, they don't have their version here. The version of all of the dependencies are centralized in something called Gradle version catalogs. And that is here. All the libraries, frameworks, all their versions are here. And their own definitions are here. So for example, this is the Android Gradle plugin, AGP. And the version of it is here. So intentionally, I made a super low version. But before I broke it, the version was this, the version that is compatible with this Gradle version. And now it's successfully synced. If you don't know what version to use, which I also don't know most of the times, I just check it myself here. The original documentation, this is the compatibility versions between Gradle and AGP. If you want to know the Gradle version, you can find it in this file, Gradle wrapper properties. This is the version that my project is using for Gradle. So as you see, for that one, 8.8 is a compatible version for AGP. It can be overwhelming at the beginning, I know, but for now it works and I can run the app. So that's it, we compiled and we run the app. Also, if it takes a long time to compile or sync the project for the first time is normal. One more handy thing to show now that we run the app is this logcat. This is where you can see the logs that come from this device, specifically coming from our app. This in the future can be very helpful to detect bugs and read the errors that are coming from the app. And also you can filter by keywords, for example, like this, because there's a lot of logs, so filtering is quite handy here. So that's it for compiling and running the app. Before we continue, maybe it's handy if I show you how you can import an already existing project, because it could be that you end up with a different code than the code that I'm writing during the lesson. So importing it is very simple. So this is GitHub. the link is shared in the description. So this is the project at its beginning state. So I just created the project. If you already used Git before and GitHub, then it's easy. You just use the Git client with this URL and then switch to this branch. But if not, the easier version is to just download the zip. So I uncompress the file and you can see the code here. So this is the folder that I need to import. So I go back to Android Studio, new import project. And you can just refer this one. Yes, trust my code. And voila. It's trying to import sync with Gradle for the first time. So that's it. See you in the next video.